Ladies and gentlemen, this is WYCA 102.3 FM, your Rejoice Gospel Network. I'm Miss Geraldine Smith, and this is A Pleasant Encounter. This week, we're going to just jump right into our program because we ran out of time last week. And I have Mr. Attorney Alan Mill and Brian Nelson, Elijah, what's your last name, honey?
Stelovier.
What a beautiful name. But anyway, we got Norm here with us, and we got Red here. But I want them to get right into the serious issue that we was talking about last week. So I'm not going to take a lot of time to talk about a lot of other stuff. At the end of this program, I do have an announcement to make. But right now, Mr. Allen, take charge and run this program.
Me run the program. All right. Well, we have Eliza here, so I really want to ask her a question.
Okay.
There's been a lot of press recently about this Homan Square police station and how people are denied lawyers and maybe tortured inside and all that. And you spend a lot of time going out, you and your organization spend a lot of time going out trying to represent people. What's your take on the Homan Square problem?
Thank you, Alan and Ms. Geraldine, everybody, for having me. You know, Chicago Police Department legal affairs themselves told me that their stats show only about 1 in 500 people ever have a lawyer in the building in any Chicago police station. I asked them for the stats. You know, a couple years ago, we made sure that they were recording that because, you know, we all know growing up watching Hollywood movies that everybody has the right to an attorney. Everything you say is going to be held against you. And, you know, those rights come into play as soon as you're not free to leave police. What a lot of people notice is that even the public defenders are not allowed to help someone while they're at the police station because the judge hasn't appointed them yet, right?
So wait, it's not like on TV where you say, I want a lawyer, and they send a public defender to help you. That's what happens every day on TV. I saw Hill Street Blues. It was filmed right here in Chicago, and that's what happened.
I saw that too, and it lied to us, Alan. It really did.
TV isn't lying?
But the Miranda rights are the truth. You know, you really do have the right to counsel if you're not free to leave police, and you have to know yourself that everything you say is going to be used against you. It's so easy and understandable to think that, you know, we should advocate for ourselves when we're alone in the station. Maybe there's a nice detective trying to tell us, hey, you know, don't be mad at me. We're just trying to find the truth. But the truth is you can't talk your way out of a situation. The police are there to actually gather evidence against you. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they're listening for as you're talking. Right? You might think, I can explain why I was there on the scene. It wasn't me. I can explain why it wasn't me. But by saying that you were there on the scene, that's the evidence they need to go ahead and charge you. Mm-hmm. And it's so painful that so many of our family members, our neighbors, have been, you know, separated from our families, our communities, just for trying to explain themselves. So First Defense Legal Aid is available in Chicago to give free Know Your Rights workshops, make sure people can really, you know, get to the bottom of what these rights are, how to use them. And then, you know, to follow through, we actually have free lawyers available 24/7 just for when someone's arrested. So if you know someone who's arrested and you call us, 1-800-LAW-REP-4, which is 1-800-529-7374, and you let us know right away.
Could you repeat that again, please?
I'd happy to. 1-800-529-7374. I see you're taking out your cell phone and putting it in there right now, right? Everybody do it, because you don't know, right? We don't even have to make a bad choice to end up getting arrested and having these rights and really needing to access them. So 1-800-LAW-REP-4 in Chicago, 24 hours a day. You call us at 2 in the morning, and a lawyer will answer and be able to find your loved one and actually go up to any police facility to meet with that loved one when, you know, an attorney is the only person that they have the right to see. It makes a world of difference. When a lawyer walks in the station, that changes everything. You know, when someone actually decides to invoke their rights and to be represented by counsel, that means the police can't talk to you anymore. They can only talk to your counsel. And it's really important, and we have volunteer lawyers ready. 24/7, we just need those calls. So if someone can alert us to the arrest, they can kick right into gear and make those Miranda rights real.
So wait, it doesn't
and so back to, yeah.
It doesn't have to be the person from the station who calls? If you're arrested,
No,
I
you
thought
know
you got
what?
a call, and you would call you guys, right?
You know, the law says, the state law and even the police policy in Chicago says you get a reasonable number of phone calls, not just one, Alan. You get a reasonable number of phone calls in a reasonable amount of time after being taken
does that
into
mean?
the police facility. And it actually renews every time you might be transferred to a different police facility, whether that be Holman Square, whether that be any other facility in the Chicago Police Department.
Yeah, but what is the span between the phone calls?
So
when
what's
you say
reasonable? Well, I am currently in conflict with the police department's definition, and so are so many people who've been affected by it, because it turns out that they're giving access to the phone at the very end, right? And they'll say even there's a checklist, right? Step by step by step, the police are to go through in order all of these things for processing, and it's down at the bottom, access to a phone call. And the phones that they offer are in lockup. And that's where you're sitting, maybe waiting for your prince to come back after most things have, gone through, and they're done with you, and they're waiting to see if there's something else that might alert them to another reason they
All right,
might
so if
want
they
to
can't
talk
call,
to
who's
you.
supposed to call you?
Anybody can call 1-800-LAW-REP4 as soon as you see someone, hear of someone having just been arrested today, yesterday, as soon as you hear about it. If you'll call 1-800-LAW-REP4 with their name and their birth date, that'll give the lawyer what they need to try and locate them and actually show up at that police facility and say, I want to see my client. And that changes everything.
But have you ever had a client that just vanished?
There have been problems sometimes accessing clients, finding clients, and that's another reason why station house defense is so critical, right? Because even in 2013, that stat I shared right at the beginning about only 0.2%, less than 1%, less than 0.5% of people who have the right to counsel actually had a lawyer in a building in the Chicago Police Department at any point that whole year. So that means that 99.8% of people are alone with police and prosecutors. And so where is the watchdogging to be able to say what's happening, right? People can be held for 48, maybe even 72 hours, but you can almost say everybody, right? With everybody not accessing counsel, we don't have a way to actually watchdog police reforms, inform what needs to happen, that should be happening, or, that could improve the system and make these rights really accessible to everybody.
What about the teenagers? The ones that's not at the age level to answer questions or without their parents and stuff. And those parents are not at that police station with them or whatever.
What's so heartbreaking is that statistic of 0.2% of anybody in police custody accessing a lawyer in the whole year of 2013. It includes children and youth. And so that's scary to me. I'm a parent. I'm a mentor. I spend so much time with young people, and knowing that, they too are alone with police and prosecutors. My neighborhood actually in Chicago has the highest numbers of juvenile arrests last time we looked at it, and almost all for nonviolent offenses. But still, alone without an advocate, and something we can do for young people is to actually advocate to police officers who, if you look at them and you ask them and you expect them to do the right thing, are often happy to, right? Let's give a station adjustment, something informal to make sure that community, family, other resources can step in and make sure the youth is accessing what they need. That's something that we can do, to avert them right from that first step, which can make all the difference. And our black youth in Chicago are especially vulnerable to false confessions. 60 Minutes, right, national news, called Chicago the false confession capital last year. And the stories that they featured were about black men who, as teenagers, were alone with police and convinced to admit to things they had nothing to do with. Charged, convicted just off of that, out of desperation, saying, hey, they told me if I just said, what color shirt my neighbor was wearing last Sunday, I could go. And then they turned around and said, well, how did you know what color shirt she was wearing if you weren't with her when she killed a baby? And now you killed a baby and now you're gone for 20 years. And there's such high risk for people in police custody to not know how important it is to know and access your rights. And you can invoke them. If you're stopped on the street or wherever, and a police officer starts to ask you questions, you can say, officer, am I free to leave? And if you're not, that's when you know your Miranda rights are kicking in. You should identify yourself, right? They have the right to do just a real basic stop. Maybe they just heard, a crime happened and they have reason to wonder if it might have been you. But beyond that, all you should say is, officer, am I free to leave? And if not, I do not consent to any searches, and I won't talk without my lawyer. And when I talk to my kids and other
don't know
youth,
that.
right? When I talk to my kids and other youth, I say, tell them your auntie, went to law school and told you don't talk without your lawyer present. There's ways to encourage young people to, be careful to not be seen as escalating a situation with police, because right or wrong, it truly is a life-threatening situation for young people. But even with that, invoking your rights is something so important to be able to do. I won't talk, I want my lawyer. When you say those words, they're like magic words in the courts, right? The police are not to further question you without a lawyer present at that point. And even if nobody around you has First Defense's number, if you don't get access to the phone, nobody knows where you are, if you hold on to that, if after you say, I won't talk, I want my lawyer, and you stay silent, that means that police are not to start a conversation with you.
That means on the record, in the writing of the law, but not the application of the law, that these things apply. Because in the application of the law, we find places like Holman and Roosevelt Road, right? Where they take them in these basements and beat the hell out of them, or beat them almost senseless. And they'll talk out of a force.
Fear.
Yeah, fear area. But what do we do? I know we can teach our youth to say the traditional legal cliche, I have a right to remain silent. We can teach them that. But what about those we can't teach, that we can't reach? And what about those who are already sitting inside of these prisons, where
Falsely confess just to stop the beating.
not only that though, Brian, but what I'm really saying is, what about all those sitting inside of these prisons who confession may have played a part in that, but the confession was a lie? Then what happens to the one who enforced this behavior and caused these young black and white people to lose their livelihood, to lose their life? And a lot of the youth get raped inside of prison and all that. Who's responsible for that, and how do we go at those who cause this? Because simply, you're just a devil from hell. Yeah.
And that's
And
why
we
I've said-
face that. I'm telling you, we face that. A lot of those youth minds are so gone because they trust nobody, and they have nobody to trust. And I think I told you, Attorney Allen, once before, kids were just coming out of my building from working, and they had a paddy wagon waiting on them and 2 police cars. Just happened, one of the neighbors or somebody saw it and called me and said, Miss Geraldine, get outside, because they've been lock up all those kids up. They
That
was
was me that
getting
called you. I was looking
off
at 'em.
work. But when I go out, and grant you, I had my cell phone in my hand because I'm still talking as I'm going out the door, and I held my cell phone up. It's a phone, you guys. It's a phone. It's not a gun. It's a phone, because they think everybody black, and if you ain't got your hands up in the air, and they shooting you now if you got your hands up in the air. But when I went over to talk to these policemen, I had to be so strategic in my conversation with them to keep them from turning on me. But they had all my children lined up with a contact card, making them sign a contact card. So I contacted you once, and you signed this card. No problem. But if I contact you or something happened at 2 blocks down, I can say I had contact with you in this area.
Yep.
It's not right. So a lot of things that is the written letter of the law is not the application of the law. Anytime you have an area like Inglewood, and you got 3 and 4 white policemen in a car, and you riding up on 1 or 2 young black boys because they look different from you, or they wear their hair different from you, but you never realize that maybe some of these same ones that you're looking at are A students in school, but out of school they dress a certain way so that they can
Fit the
fit
description.
the environment out there, that the danger that they in anyway. So now they're in danger of the police and they're in danger of one another.
I was saying, like we were talking about on the way here, where the public defender gets the kid to plead guilty to a little bit of marijuana, and then his whole family gets kicked out of housing. Without the public defender explaining it to them, don't plead guilty to this because it's going to affect your whole family. If you're under Section 8 or getting a subsidy, they could kick your whole family out because you had a joint. You know, and that's just so wrong because that's an illness. You know, treat them instead of kicking the family out. I mean, where does the line get stopped and say, who's to be responsible?
What you're saying is very important for the simple reason that you might not have knew it, but attorney Lou Myers and one of her friends, Harold Davis, they had cards out that said what you said on the card, 5,000 cards. The police started stopping the children and tearing them up. They had that right, but they didn't keep it up. They didn't promote it like you doing. You need more information about it, such as on your line of work. And with her help, I'll get you on another radio and TV so you can put it out where they can understand.
Well, y'all put it out with us. I mean, a couple thoughts. One is that when it becomes the norm for people to actually access their rights, and there is counsel going in and out of the station, as by design, this is going to have an effect, I believe. Yes. And, you know, around the world, there is a movement to say that you don't just have the right to counsel, you have the right to actually be able to get a lawyer in police custody, right? And the United Nations studied all over the globe, every continent, places where, you know, people were trained to prepare their neighbors with Know Your Rights information. And there was a real way to access your rights in the station, and it became normal. It's not just an abstraction, which that's disenfranchising in itself, right? If I know my Miranda rights and I know good and well they're basically a joke because there's no lawyers available, that's part of what can diminish hope and make people feel like, you know, rights are not for us. But when it becomes the norm, you know, it actually improves public safety. I'm not surprised by that, but that's in studies by the United Nations. It's studies in Yale University, and it's what a lot of us know, right? When people start to be able to experience their rights, when we know that we deserve our human rights. And these rights that we're talking about, as far as the right to counsel in police custody, the right to fair treatment, these are some of the rare human rights that are actually also constitutional rights in this country, right? Very rare.
And it's not
right. We don't have the right to housing. We don't have the right to education. Well, maybe in Illinois. But anyways, but we have the right to these, you know, protections when we're in state custody. And so
But you have to remember now, if a youth he's standing in, a black youth is standing in front of three white police, and they're intimidating him. He's not gonna say, well, I have a right to an attorney. I have a right to remain silent. When you know they're gonna beat the hell out you anyway.
When these police can come to expect that it's just as likely for a lawyer to be there at the station as is not, and this has happened in other countries with youth of color, even in Europe, right? African, Arab youth have been, you know, mistreated by police, have experienced these unjust arrests, abuse, torture, etc. And the way they went to try and solve for it was to make sure that there was a way to have defense counsel at the station, because then an officer has to think twice. My partner is really, you know, mistreating somebody. I'm going to have to report this because there's going to be defense counsel at the station. It's going to come back to me, and it's going to matter what I do or don't do in the face of it. So it can change the culture, right? Right now, we know that police culture in the police stations is run by the police. And I don't believe that we can expect that to heal from the inside out. You know, so to be able to have people in and out on behalf of the people arrested, that can actually really change things en masse, so that it changes that game, you know, where a young person's thinking, man, I'm here by myself. If I say I won't talk, I want my lawyer, and stay silent, it's not looking good. I'm here alone for 2 days. They're in control of the heat, my food. You know, they got guns, locks, keys. They got the pen to write the police report. But the truth is, you know, anything you say is going to be used against you. Trying to talk your way out of something in the police station is nothing but giving them words to pick and choose from that might end up being the only thing that they need to charge you with something, you know. And so to invoke and experience your rights, the more that we get this to be the norm, it should be able to actually change things, or be able to document the truth which is how things play out, different than the letter of the law, which you're saying, so that there can be, that information to change things.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are really saying the same thing, is that you can't put it all on the kid on the street. You got to change the culture of the police, and that can't come from the kids on the street. That's got to come from the lawyers who come into the station. But it also, let's not ignore the political system as well. And we do have elected officials who are, at least in theory, in charge of the police. So don't let them
So
off.
is women going to be in trouble because the present mayor of the city of Chicago decided to call the lead person of the Chicago public school the president because he decided to call her a B word? Does that mean all of us is that B?
Yeah, it means that there's a disrespect shown from the top. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the tone is set at the very top, whether it's respect for women, whether it's respect for minorities, and whether it's putting up with police officers who abuse people's rights and think that the Fourth Amendment or the Fifth Amendment is a joke, or the Fourth Amendment, either of them, are jokes. All of them.
All the whole paper. No.
And that's what me and Alan was saying when he was talking about tell-lie vision. It tells you a lie.
Right.
In your vision. You got to break that. That's what you and Ms. Smith were talking about. You have to break that syndrome.
And now
Commander Burge, by him being a commander, he taught all them guys under him that it's okay to do this because they followed him. He's their boss. And he taught them wrong, and he really needs to be held accountable for this. For every one of them guys that was touched, he needs to lose his pension. He needs to be locked up. I mean, he tortured too many people, wrongfully convicted too many people. And who knows how many lives he's taken.
But let's
And
not put it on a Burge, because
and-
he started bad, but it's a culture that goes all the way to the top. Daley was the state's attorney at the time, and he didn't kick all these cases out. He became the mayor. He didn't investigate. And Rahm Emanuel is now sitting in the same chair, and he hasn't done any of that investigation either. All he did was give a verbal "I'm sorry."
And don't you know, no policy has changed to actually prevent this from keep happening. And last I saw, the majority of payouts for police misconduct, torture, abuse are not related to Burge.
Right.
So this is an issue that goes on,
Ongoing.
and there hasn't been any policy change. Yes, the only thing I know of is probably the state law that requires videotaping confessions of a number of felonies. But as far as a city law, a city change, a policy, a procedure, something different to keep this from happening, there hasn't been something. And, if I also want to say, too, that, when we're teaching people, say, I won't talk, I want my lawyer, and stay silent. That's one of the only situations that I would encourage people to stay silent, right, when they're facing oppression. But it's really true that it is so important, because when a lawyer walks in the building on your behalf, even lawyers I know, right, Alan, you're arrested, you can ask for a lawyer,
Absolutely.
right? It changes everything. But that experience of believing that you deserve and can invoke your rights, and when we can follow up with a lawyer at the station,
Right.
this can be a big game changer in a larger movement for leadership development, for fighting for more human rights together, right? Because individually, one-on-one, you cannot advocate for yourself with the police the
'Cause-
same way a lawyer can. But when you experience that and you join stories, then it's going to be absolutely the people most directly affected by police abuse who can and will make change, right? Look at the reparations ordinance. This is close to happening, right? Led by people directly affected, survivors, victims of Burge and other police torture. Look at even the Audi home reforms. After lawyers and judges were successful in mandating changes to treat youth held at the Audi home, as human children. Even then, the changes didn't go into effect until young people who had been locked up there stood up and said, we have something to talk about. Y'all fired the janitors to save money, and nobody's been washing our drawers. And they did, a direct action when they were turned away from the conversation. The next day, the federal government intervened, appointed them as human rights monitors, and I haven't seen as much change as what they were able to do, right? So there's a bigger picture and a small picture, and I think sometimes educating people about your rights with police and making sure that they can be realized, that can turn into a larger movement, really led by people advocating for themselves in a planful way.
On what is your opinion on us educating these youth, and they really believe what we say?
We have now, not just attorneys, but non-attorneys who are from the communities who have been affected by these systems, and who themselves are really powerful educators and organizers. And I believe that that is key, to do the real interactive long-term work. We've been developing, we have 30 peer educators who can actually spread the words themselves to their neighbors, their congregations, their blocks. And that's what it takes, so everybody listening can be part of that movement.
Well, I guess my question is, with this information being here and this, my question is, how come this hasn't been promoted sooner? How come, sooner before, now? How come this legal aid, wasn't out there to be promoted heavily,
Would you believe that for the past 20 years, every minute of every day and night, we have had on-call attorneys on the other end of that 1-800-LAW-REP-4 number.
Really, it's been 20 years.
20 years this
Wow.
spring. We're going to party. Everybody's invited. Hey,
You know,
everybody's
you
been
had that
part
party
of
over at
it.
Inglewood
Yes, ma'am. Come
community
to
center
my
over
house.
there.
Yes, ma'am. Let's do it.
Let's talk about having that over there, because tons of young people over there need this advice and need to understand how serious it is that we do. Ladies and gentlemen, I have one announcement to make. My choir director over at Lifefield is going to make that announcement real quick, Stephanie.
Hey, Chicagoland, Indiana land. My name is Stephanie Porche,
Deacon Matthew.
Latifah Hill,
and we are.
Raya.
Check it out. On March the 14th, we got a prayer breakfast going on. We want y'all to come out and celebrate free food, free praise, free worship. Come and join us and help us build our youth ministry and build up the community of Inglewood. Once again, I said that's March the 14th, 6855 South Emerald Life Builders. Be there, y'all. Let's praise God and improve on our community.
And,
Yes.
continue the education on the law, on what we need to do to help stop some of the violence, both from the police department and from the youth on the street. Ladies and gentlemen, this is WYCA 102.3 FM, your Rejoice Gospel Network. I'm Miss Geraldine Smith, and this is a Pleasant Encounter. Pleasant Encounter serving as a smorgasbord to help us with all type of information that we need to help our communities and help society. Thank you, Mr. Crawford, for making this your humanitarian arm to reach out to the public. And I do invite my guests back again. And that.